There's a new study out today about U.S. income inequality. Guess what? We are now rivaling, if not surpassing, many Latin American countries when it comes to economic inequality. A new study out today that produces this graph. Now here's what this graph represents. This graph represents, as it says, inequality in the Americas. Basically what they did was they divided the income of the top 20% with the income of the bottom 20% and then looked at individual countries. How much more does the top 20% in these countries make than the bottom 20%? And in the United States, we are now in the middle of the pack. The wealthiest 20% of Americans earn 16 times more than the poorest 20%. Now, what's important about this graph, among other things? Back in 1980, that number was 10. So 16 times up from 10 times in 1980. And so when we think about Latin America, I think a lot of people think about countries that are very economically unequal. You think about cities with lots of very poor people, lots of blight, lots of destitution, but then these kind of gated communities, fortresses where the aristocracy lives. We think of that as Latin America, but we don't think of that as our own country, and yet the data it shows that that's what our country's becoming.
I've been to some of the gated communities around Houston, for instance, like the Sugar Land area. Mm-hmm. That seems to describe that, actually. Mm-hmm. Lovely area, by the way, but there's striking inequality between neighborhoods. Another interesting fact, so you said in 1980 we had a 10.5.
Yeah.
If you bring up the chart again really fast, that's still, back in 1980, more unequal than Uruguay and Venezuela, which is interesting. So I think that this is very important to talk about. What I worry is that anyone who's not politically in the same area as us is going to meet this with, well, so what? It's unequal. I mean, that's, you have freedom, baby. You go out there, you make as much money as you can. Some people fail, some people succeed. But there are incredibly important consequences to this, and they actually have quite a bit to do with Latin America. So back when I was in political science academia, one of the areas that at the time, it was unfortunate for me because I didn't find it particularly interesting, but we talked a lot about what caused regimes to fall. Why did certain countries fall into chaos? And there's lots of theories why. But there are a couple of books that have come out in the last few decades, and they have found that one of the strongest correlations between governments falling is with inequality, unfortunately. A lot of those examples are found in Latin America. And it's not hard, if you really think about it, to understand why that would be. When you have certain people who have so much more money than the masses at the bottom, their political objectives are going to be very different, and because they have the money, they'll be the ones making the decisions. And if a huge portion of the population feels that they have nothing they have nothing in the system. The system isn't helping them. That causes violence in a lot of cases. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to happen in America in a year or two, but it happened in these cases for the same reasons as what we're seeing right now with the economic inequality in the US.
And the stat that came out last week on this, because there's stats every week, though it was that the Walton family now owns, I believe, more wealth than the bottom 40% of Americans. So what is it, 8, 9, 10 people control more wealth than the bottom 40% of the whole country. I want to go back to the point that you made earlier about the conservative argument about this. The conservative argument, you're right, is, look, we may be more unequal, but there's more opportunity here. There's more chance to get ahead. And here's the thing with that argument. Even that argument's not true. And that's not me speaking. That's not exactly a liberal rag, the Wall Street Journal speaking. A couple years ago, they did a big study looking at inequality in the United States, looking at the economies of Europe, and found that it's actually more difficult to move up in social economic class in the United States than it is in Euro-socialist countries.
Exactly.
Now, it makes perfect sense, right? If you're living in a European country, and I'm not saying they have no problems, but if you don't have to worry as much about affording college, you don't have to worry as much, if at all, about going bankrupt because of your health care bills. Essentially, that allows you to focus more of your energy on succeeding in the economy. That gives you a chance to actually move up without having to worry about being bankrupted by these embedded costs. Here in the United States, it's true that in terms of social class mobility, it's pretty easy to fall.
Yeah.
Because
especially in regard to health care.
Yeah, absolutely. One illness can bankrupt you. There was a study out this week that said that 50 or 60% of Americans are one economic crisis away from falling into poverty in terms of their savings. So it's true in the United States that downward social mobility is more intense than in European countries, but moving up, it's actually less.
Unless you're a really good dancer.
That's
then
true.
With the power of YouTube, you might be able to move up.
That's absolutely true.